My definition of design is intellectually informed decision making. What that means to me is that you have to do research and inquiry to inform your thinking about the decisions that you're called on to make in the design process.
I think in its simplest form, it's the creation of a thing or a system to affect a very specific end state, a goal. Traditionally, that's been applied to things, right? We think of design as creating a new car or a new application. But I think it also applies to strategy when you're talking about developing a marketing plan or a business or something like that. Fundamentally, design is about taking knowledge and data and refining it to something that's usable, something that's tangible to affect change in some way, to affect a purpose in some way.
Design fits into both planning and execution of military operations because design generates a way of thinking about military problems that we weren't teaching before. It focuses on creative and critical thinking and the application of those creative and critical thinking skills to what we call conceptual planning, the planning that you do before you commence detailed planning in order to conduct a military operation.
Design is somewhat of a misleading word. It has many, many definitions, and I like the basic definition that it's informed decision making. What we teach, however, is the details of how you come up with the information and how you structure that decision-making process. And what that means in reality is that you have a phase that is coming up with the concept for your plan and then coming up with a way to translate that plan into a detailed operational action.
I've always taught at SAMS the detailed planning and execution of operations. We've always also talked about the conceptual planning required to do high-quality mission analysis, for example. But until we began teaching design, we didn't really have the theoretical background, both from the schools of practice and also the schools of theory of design, to be able to do it effectively.
We are on the cusp of significant changes in terms of teaching design, and that the key issues are communication, building collaboration, understanding diversity as we bring teams together to execute more and more complex solutions to complex problems.
The idea for this program was to get our students out of the classroom so that they could actually learn by doing design, by doing conceptual planning and detailed planning. So we took them out to see these world-class practitioners of the art and science of design that happened to be right here in our backyard. And I think the chief thing that they took away was that you can't separate conceptual planning from the move into detailed planning.
Seeing two presenters right now, two presenters at Populous that worked through the challenges of a client that knew what he wanted, but didn't know how to express it, and then what the designers came up with afterwards. That to me was fascinating.
Conceptual planning, which is design, and detailed planning are one operational entity. We saw that very clearly as the designers of SOF-T and the practitioners were very early in the process sitting together and discussing back and forth. And during the excursion, we had both the practitioners on the construction side and the designers together. And that was very helpful to hear from them that they worked very close together.
I think the most beneficial part of it was seeing that there are two parts of this process. There's a design piece and then there's a construction piece. And then when you see that, you can see the applicability to our operations in the military too. Well, we have problems that we have to have to conceptually kind of figure out and try to resolve conceptually. But then there's a detailed component to that too, where we actually have to execute it and figure out how we're going to actually do what we've conceived. And so seeing how that process relates to in an architectural firm and in a structural contracting project, and seeing how that can relate back to the military is most beneficial.
And so in seeing what the private sector is doing, they're able to, one, see specific real-world examples of how to gather this evidence, how to interpret it, how to put it together, and two, how to present it to an audience to make their best case. And that's a very different kind of leadership skill.
Okay, within the operations process, you have both conceptual and detailed thinking, and they must be done together. A good methodology that you can use for conceptual thinking is the Army Design Methodology, and currently we teach that in the School of Advanced Military Studies. We teach this under the process called the integrated planning process. Within the integrated planning process, you have detailed thinking and conceptual thinking, and they must come together. The three processes that we use are the Army Design Methodology, the military decision-making process, and then we use troop planning procedures as it goes down to the 18 or 19-year-old kid that's going to conduct operations in combat.